very tall up here. Yeah. Okay, hello everyone, good morning, and thank you for coming. Merci d'être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the tragic shooting that happened in Vaughan. On behalf of all present, I offer my condolences to the victims and their families. This morning, we are on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Je suis vraiment heureuse d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. C'est un jour de célébration d'une longue année de travail dur, et je suis vraiment contente d'être ici. I'm really happy to be here. It's a day of celebration after a year of hard work, and it's a pleasure to be in Toronto and to be joined by the Deputy Prime Minister, by Ministers Lecce and Williams, and a big thank you to the Toronto Pinnacle YMCA Childcare Centre for hosting us today. In just one short year, we have signed over 13 bilateral agreements with the provinces and territories. We have made tremendous progress from coast to coast to coast in making childcare more affordable, more accessible, higher quality, and more inclusive. And with that, I would like to turn to Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, the Honourable Chrystia Freeland, to make some remarks. Over to you, Chrystia.
Thanks. Okay, well, thank you very much, Corinna. And I do also want to start by saying that, you know, I think like everyone in the GTA, everyone in Ontario, everyone in Canada, our hearts go out to the families of the victims of the horrific shooting in Vaughan, and certainly our government and Minister Lecce's government stand ready to do whatever the community, whatever the families need us to do. Let me also start by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. I am so glad to be here today with my friend and colleague, Minister Corinna Gould, who played such an important role in getting our national early learning and childcare program across the finish line. Thank you so much, Corinna. I know as a mother of a young child, this is an issue particularly close to you, and you have accomplished something historic. And I'm really glad to be here with Minister Lecce and Minister Williams. Our partnership with them and with the provincial government in Ontario has been central to this effort. But above all, I would like to thank the amazing educators who work here at the Toronto Pinnacle YMCA for hosting us. As a mother of three, I am in awe of the work that our early childhood educators do. It makes me just tired to think about what they do every single day. And I do want to start by saying to each one of them, to the amazing people I met here today, to Melissa, who is an early childhood educator as well, thank you very much. The job you do is extremely important. I think it's the most important job in the world. And I want you to hear from me, from the government, that we respect your work. And I think we need to pay you a little more too. This is such an exciting day for families here in Ontario. When we first announced our plan to make high quality, affordable childcare a reality in Canada, it was welcomed by many. But there was some justifiable skepticism. After all, similar promises had been made and broken for 5 decades. Even last March, when we actually announced our agreement with Ontario, and that was a great milestone, I know that there were some people who doubted whether we would actually be able to deliver. But in close partnership with provinces and territories, in close partnership with early learning and childcare educators who actually do the work, and with parents across the country, we have done it. And so I am so happy to announce that parents in Ontario will see their childcare fees reduced by 50% on average by the end of this year. Yeah. And Ontario is on track to see childcare fees of just $10 a day by March of 2026. Cutting fees in half could save parents in Ontario about $6,000 per year per child. And as families here in Ontario are dealing with elevated inflation, those savings will mean real relief. We were speaking earlier today with Corinna, with Ministers Lecce and Williams, and all of us have spoken to families who have told us what a big difference it is making. Some people have said they're going to be able to afford Christmas presents for their kids because of these fee reductions. But really, really important. Affordable childcare also means that women in Ontario do not have to choose between their career and their family. 82% of Canadian women in their prime working years had jobs in November. That is the highest number on record in Canadian history, a true milestone. And what it tells you is that our national system of early learning and childcare is doing exactly what it was intended to do. This is social policy, for sure. This is about making life better for children and families, for sure. But as a Minister of Finance, I can tell you this is also economic policy, which is driving jobs and growth in our country. Bien que nous puissions tous être fiers du travail qui nous a amenés ici aujourd'hui, l'annonce d'aujourd'hui est également le résultat de plus d'un demi-siècle de militantisme de la part des féministes canadiennes. Les féministes du Québec qui nous ont montré la voie il y a toutes ces années. Judy Lamarche, Laura Sabia et Monique Bégin, qui ont convaincu le gouvernement de créer la Commission royale d'enquête sur la situation de la femme en 1967. Les féministes de l'Ontario, Morna Ballantine, Martha Friendly et Gordon Cleveland, qui se sont battus pendant des décennies pour la création d'un système de garderie universel, abordable et de haute qualité. Ken Dryden et Paul Martin, pour leur année de travail acharné au niveau fédéral, ainsi que mon collègue Ahmed Hussein, qui a ouvert la voie à notre système national d'apprentissage et de garde des jeunes enfants. And to all of the many, many Canadian women, from coast to coast to coast, who fought for a national system of early learning and childcare long before it really became possible to see the whole country coming out and support it, who did not waver in the face of setback after setback. I want to say to them, to our foremothers, thank you very much. We are transforming Canada with this system for the better. And we would not be where we are here today without your work over more than 5 decades. Merci beaucoup. Corinna, à toi la parole.
Thank you so much, Christia. I'll just raise this a little bit. I think we need to add to that list Christia Freeland, because we would not be here today without the visionary decision and leadership and funding of $30 billion over 5 years had we not had a finance minister and a prime minister who were committed to understanding that this is not just good social policy, but this is really smart economic policy. And that 82% figure that was just referenced, it's proof in the pudding that we are making a difference right here in Toronto, in Ontario, and across the country. So thank you, Christia, for your vision and your leadership as well. C'est vraiment une journée de célébration aujourd'hui, avec l'annonce d'aujourd'hui d'une réduction de 50% pour les familles en garderie ici à Toronto, en Ontario. Ça rend presque tous le pays dans une période de réduction de frais de garde de 50%. Today is a day of celebration with today's announcement here in Ontario that Ontario families and licensed childcare will be receiving a 50% fee reduction by the end of this calendar year. That means that almost the entire country from coast to coast to coast will have seen fee reductions of 50%. And as Minister Freeland was saying, these are real savings in real pockets of real Canadians. I have had the opportunity to travel to every single province across this country and almost every territory over the last 12 months. And the stories that I've heard from parents about the meaningful difference that this is making in their lives fill you up with pride, but fill you up with the conviction to know that this is the right thing to do. You know, Minister Freeland talked about parents who've said, you know, they're able to buy Christmas presents. I've talked to families who have said when they go to the grocery store, they're not deciding as to whether they're going to buy meat or not. That the difference that this is making in the lives of families across this country is so meaningful. We often, you know, talk to families about saving for post-secondary education, but until today, really, sometimes childcare was actually more expensive than a post-secondary education, and we didn't prepare families for those savings and those expenditures. But today we are making a difference, and what's exciting about this is that this is a difference for generations to come. This policy is so important and it's so impactful. We have 25 years of history in Quebec that demonstrates, you know, the numbers of women going back into the workforce. Quebec has the highest female workforce participation in the country. And I hope that, you know, by the end of these 5 years, we have multiple provinces and territories competing for that honor. And what it means for Canada's future and our economic future. We know that investments in childcare have an incredible return on investment in terms of dollars generated in the economy. So today is an exciting day. It's an exciting day for families in this country. It's an exciting day for women in this country. And it's also an exciting day for our childhood workforce. Quand je parle aux éducateurs et éducatrices de partout dans ce pays, et je parle aux étudiants qui sont en train d'étudier pour être une éducateur ou éducatrice de petite enfance, ils disent que cet investissement, cet commitment aux garderies, aux petites enfances, c'est une validation du carrière qu'ils ont choisi. C'est une valorisation de le travail qu'elle fait à chaque jour. La ministre Freeland a parlé de l'importance des éducateurs et des éducatrices, et nous savons que sans eux, nous n'avons pas un système. Elles sont vraiment au cœur de notre système. And so making sure that we have a full picture. Today's announcement is about fee reductions, it's about space creation, but we know that in order to have that successful system, we must also ensure that we are having high quality, well-paid, supported early childhood workforce. So I hope that we are all in celebration. You know, one of the other things that we are celebrating is the fact that just 2 weeks ago, we introduced, or less than 2 weeks ago, we introduced federal child care legislation, which commits the federal government long-term to funding, but also to early childhood and child care within the Federation. And so we have many more milestones to achieve, but today is a very, very exciting day. We're pleased to be here with our provincial partners, and with that, I would like to turn it over to Minister Lecce and Minister Williams. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Gold. I do want to start off just by speaking about my community of Vaughan and the senseless tragedy that has left so many heartbroken. To all those who have been impacted in Vaughan, in the community, in my riding, please know that our government stands with you, and the community stands with you. We all grieve with you during this most disturbing shooting that's happened in the heart of our community. I want to thank our police and our first responders who were present on the line responding to this unspeakable moment, and also for the work they did to save lives. We stand together and obviously we send our prayers to the victims in our community. And I do want to thank Minister Gold and Minister Freeland and of course Minister Williams for joining as we celebrate the good work being done here at the Pinnacle YMCA and frankly right across our province. You know, for too long, childcare was inaccessible and entirely unaffordable for so many Ontario families. Parents have said the cost of childcare was equivalent to their mortgage, sometimes more. Many mothers said that they were forced to choose between working or having a child at all. And this reality will be part of our collective history, because starting January 1st, we are proud to deliver a 50% reduction in childcare fees, which is going to save families significantly. Parce qu'à partir du 1er janvier, nous sommes fiers d'offrir une réduction 50% des frais de garde d'enfants. A 50% decrease in childcare fees will save anywhere between $6,000 and $10,000 per child. It's why we're excited to be here at the Y to promote our plan to provide relief to families. And let me recognize the strong partnership with all levels of government, with all operators, and with our families working together to get this done. Earlier this year in March, Ontario's government signed this historic $13.2 billion national child care agreement with the federal government that includes additional year of funding. And I'm proud to say that since then, 92% of our licensed child care operators have enrolled in this program. This is significant for Ontario families and parents because it ensures that their choice is respected and as many families are supported. Because of this, parents with children under the age of 6 in these participating centers are already receiving an average of 25% in savings that were retroactive to April 1st. By the end of this month, I'm proud to announce that parents will see their childcare fees further reduced by up to 50% on average, as noted, saving $6,000, but for some kids, for infants here in downtown Toronto, upwards of $10,000, and it's going to make a big difference with $1.9 billion in savings planned for your 2023 alone to help working parents. And this relief is especially important as we enter the holidays. Today, I'm also pleased to announce our plan to increase childcare spaces, in addition to saving families 50% by January 1. We're cutting down costs to 50% on average and creating and supporting the creation of 53,000 new licensed childcare spaces by the end of December 2026. We're cutting fees and announcing startup grants to ensure that spaces are created in the communities where they're needed the most. From helping single parents to children with special education needs to everyday parents living in communities where we're realizing significant growth, we are ensuring we create spaces to address the modern workplace through the night and on weekends. Because of our partnership with the federal and local governments, we are delivering a deal that works for this province here in Ontario. And that means support for parents in both not-for-profit and for-profit centers like here at the Y. This means working with families in Ontario so that they have flexibility to choose the childcare that meets their needs. In addition to announcing that 50% reduction in childcare fees starting January 1, we're also announcing those capital startup grants, which are provided to operators to incentivize the expansion of spaces in communities small and large. And let me just close by thanking all of the partners involved here, to echo the messages of those before me. In the childcare sector, in our municipal and federal governments, First Nations, and of course the childcare workers themselves, who give so much of themselves to care for our children. We will continue to work together to ensure all families in Ontario have access to affordable childcare they deserve. And working together is very much at the core of what Ontario's Associate Minister of Women, Social and Economic Opportunity is all about. Charmaine is a strong and principled voice for women, for opportunity and affordability, and so it is my great honor to welcome my friend, the Honourable Charmaine Williams, to the podium this morning. Thank you all.
Hello. I as well also would like to lift up all of those impacted by the shooting in Vaughan up in prayer. My thoughts and prayers are with you all. I want to thank Pinnacle YMCA for hosting us today, and Minister Freeland and Gold, and Minister Lecce for all of their hard work in seeing today happen. So good morning, or maybe we're in this afternoon. We are proud to have secured a deal that works for women and families across the province. Families can now make the right childcare choices that fits their needs. Not only is Ontario on track to create 86,000 new childcare spaces by 2026, but families will be seeing a 50% fee reduction by the end of the month. This deal creates opportunities for women and entrepreneurs and small business owners in the childcare sector to participate as well. And that's why we've seen an amazing 92% of service providers opt in. Now, as Ontario's Associate Minister of Women's Social and Economic Opportunities, Ontario's workforce is one of my top priorities, and advancing women in Ontario's workforce is my top priority. And today's childcare announcement unlocks a key resource in that effort. Many women make up approximately 40% of a household income, and in some homes, women are the sole income source. That is why when women have access to affordable and reliable childcare, they are better positioned for long-term economic stability and success. And when a woman is able to succeed in our economy, she changes not only her own life, but the lives of all who depend on her as well. And that's why today's achievement is so very important. Through this partnership with the federal government, we're supporting families right here in Ontario with more than $1.9 billion in financial relief. And we're creating thousands of new childcare spaces across the province. And we're supporting female entrepreneurs and empowering those looking to enter the workforce and stay in the workforce. These are huge wins for everyone. And as a working mother of 5 children, I truly understand the importance of childcare. I am so thrilled about this announcement, and I know it's going to positively change the lives of so many Ontario women and families. Because when women and working families succeed, Ontario succeeds. Thank you, and I will hand it back over to Minister Gold.
Great, thank you so much, Ministers Lecce and Williams. We can achieve great things when different levels of government work together, and I think today's childcare announcement is an example of that when we get together and we row in the same direction, ultimately it's Canadians who benefit. And it's really thrilling to be here at the YMCA. The Y is the largest childcare provider in Toronto, in Ontario, and actually in Canada. And Linda Cottis is the Vice President here for the YMCA of the Greater Toronto Area, and she is going to deliver some remarks. The Pinnacle Y is one of 311 Ys in Toronto alone that deliver childcare. So I always like to say that childcare is a win for children, it's a win for our families, but it's also a win for our economy. And so, Linda, please, the stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. As the Minister said, my name is Linda Cottis. I'm the Senior Vice President for the YMCA of Greater Toronto and a recently appointed member of the National Advisory Council on Early Learning with Minister Gould and Childcare. Thank you to the Minister, government representatives, and special guests, and our truly incredible YMCA educators. I want to officially welcome you to Pinnacle YMCA childcare, one of our more than 311 locations in the Greater Toronto Area. It's one of over 800 in the province of Ontario and 1,250 locations across Canada. What we heard today in the remarks is it's a very important milestone on the journey to an inclusive, publicly funded, early learning and childcare system in Ontario. The YMCA of Greater Toronto has been offering licensed childcare since the late 60s, and we've developed YMCA Playing to Learn curriculum and have regularly encouraged government to invest more in our youngest learners and their families through licensed childcare. We are happy to see all levels of government listening, taking action, and working together to get this done. It's not easy work, but nothing worth doing is ever easy. Our educators know this well. They play a pivotal role in the foundation for education and discovery throughout a child's entire life. Children are inherently curious and ready to learn. Our educators tap into this enthusiasm and help children grow into creative, independent, and healthy children. Our educators are remarkable, and we need to work together to carve a path forward to recognize their true impact on children and families. We can't talk about a vision for childcare system without talking about the educators who make it happen. We need a robust, early learning, early childhood education workforce to deliver on increasing access, to support inclusion, and to enhance overall quality in the childcare sector. The 50% reduction is an incredible step forward in the journey to support children and families across Canada and here in Ontario. But affordability alone will not create a comprehensive system we need. We're ready to work with our partners in government and build on this momentum as we look forward to 2023. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thanks to the Y for your decades of work in childcare and really helping to build out those systems. I would now like to invite Melissa Kwan, who is a parent with a child at the Y here in Toronto, to say a few words. Melissa Kwan.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to share with what this means to me and my family. It's definitely a huge relief to have our childcare fees cut in half. I have 3 children, and for many years, childcare has represented the single largest expense in our household. Cutting these expenses in half will make a huge difference to us as a family and to many working families like ours. Especially these days as the cost of everything continues to rise, it's good to know that there will be some relief when it comes to childcare. I think it's fantastic that governments are making the investment in children and families. Raising kids today is expensive, and childcare is a huge part of that. My oldest 2 started childcare years ago, and my youngest is in childcare now, so I've been feeling that weight for many years. But with the savings I'll have from further reduced fees in January, there will be more wiggle room to better support my family. There will be more in my pocket each month to invest in my family's needs, like my home, my kids' future education, and extracurriculars. As an educator myself, I know how much effort goes into caring for our kids. And as a parent, I feel so fortunate to have them in an educational, nurturing environment here at the Y. It really helps set them up for success. I'm so happy the government is making children a priority. And I'm thrilled for so many families that will get the benefit of affordable early childhood education through these agreements. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing with us today. And I have to say that it has been so rewarding to travel across this country and to hear from parents, particularly mothers, what this means to them. Pretty much in every province or territory that I've traveled to, I've spoken to moms who have said that they're now able to go back to work, that these fee reductions mean that their family can afford this. And what that means is long-term financial stability. It has a direct impact today, but it also has a long-term impact. So thank you so much for coming. I think today is a celebration. We're thrilled you can be here. That concludes the formal part. We're now going to open it up to the media. I'm going to turn it over to Edgeman so that we can answer questions. Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll take questions from the media. Please state your name and your outlet before asking the question and who the question is directed to. Go ahead, first question.
Brendan Kennedy from the Toronto Star. Minister Gould, in October you wrote a letter to Minister Lecce to express some concerns that you had about how the Ontario government had changed the funding guidelines for daycares opting into the program, specifically how they removed some cost control mechanisms. As far as I know, those changes haven't been reversed. Do you still have those concerns?
So as we talked about last time, letters is how governments communicate to each other. It's not a super exciting way, but that's important. But I can say that we continue to have a really good working relationship, and we've forged a path forward. And I would also say that the numbers of 92% enrollment in Ontario are really positive and really good, and so we're happy with how that's going, but we're going to continue to have conversations and to make sure that we can collaborate together.
I guess for Minister Lecce, the revised funding guidelines, the funding guidelines for 2023 I don't think have been released yet. Do you expect that the changes that were made in August to remain in place?
You know, our priority is really just to help universalize access to affordable childcare. I mean, as you know, childcare fees rose by over 420% under government's past, and I think we all could accept that's an unacceptable reality for working parents. So we built out a plan that listens to the best advice of operators. We've set up our own task force with Linda and others who participate on to give advice to government on how to navigate, move forward, to reduce fees, increase access, and make sure that we're really increasing those spaces in the communities that need it the most. So we look forward to continuing the conversation with every level of government, with operators themselves, with the workers, with respect to the way forward. But we do believe the plan in place for 2022, for 2023 and beyond will allow us to get to $10 on average by year 25 as per these stipulations of this agreement, which is really the benchmark we seek to deliver on. Affordability by January 1 of this year, 50% reduction, $6,000 on average, up to $10,000 for some children, for example, here in Toronto, and systematically those fees going down until we hit $10. So we believe the plan is in place, and I really appreciate the value-added input of many sector stakeholders, because for us, the bottom line is making childcare affordable for parents.
Hi there, I'm Marie Morrissey, CBC. Minister Lecce, condolences to those in your riding.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. I know that there's a police update around 2 o'clock. Is there anything any update that you can provide in the interim?
I will defer entirely to law enforcement who acted swiftly yesterday and continue to be present today in the city of Vaughan. York Region Police, the chief has also spoken and commented on this, so I will defer to law enforcement as the investigation is active. Just reaffirm my profound sense of loss. I know that building very well. I had family that lived in those condos. I've visited pretty much every Christmas for their holiday parties, so it's a really nice community, very good people. A lot of seniors, just a lot of good people that live there, so it's just tragic as it would be in any community, but in Vaughan, far too often I think many families are seeing these senseless attacks, and I think we all are resolved to confront and counter the rise of violence in our communities, and that's something I know the province is very much committed to do.
Thank you. My follow-up, Minister Freeland. And if you don't mind English and French, that would be great. With this deal on its way to meeting objectives, minds turn to the next big transfer to the provinces. How much is available for healthcare? And have you started bilateral talks towards that on a similar basis with billions available in return for common objectives?
Well, thank you very much for the question. And I do actually want to start by saying something about what was remarkable about today. I was thinking as I was listening to my colleagues that you could have, if you hadn't known the name of the person speaking and maybe taken out the references to mother of 3, mother of 5, etc., any one of us could have made each other's remarks. There was really remarkable unity of purpose. And I do really want to thank Minister Lecce, Mr. Williams, and also Premier Ford for getting there, because it took a lot of work for us to come to a common vision on early learning and childcare. But today for me shows that we've done it and that we have a shared understanding of why it matters. And as Corinna said, we can do such great things in Canada when we kind of roll up our sleeves, put the politics to one side, and just work together for Canadians. So thank you very much, guys. It's a big deal. And I am confident we're going to be able to do the same thing when it comes to healthcare. As Minister Duclos has said, we are committed to working with the provinces and territories. Universal single-payer healthcare is fundamental to Canada and to being Canadian, and we all know our healthcare system is facing terrible strains, and we need to come together in a similar way to shore up our healthcare system. The federal government is committed to doing that. We also believe strongly that this is not just about money. Canada spends very close to the top of the OECD when it comes to healthcare. Collectively, we spend a lot already, and the next year. So there is a lot of money there. We have committed to providing more support, but we also really believe that what Canadians deserve is a transformation of the system, and the federal government is committed to doing our part to get there. And I really, really believe with goodwill on all sides, and I believe that's there. I really think it's achievable. I think we're going to get there just as we did with early learning and childcare. Alors, concernant les soins de santé, notre gouvernement comprend les inquiétudes, les frustrations des Canadiens et Canadiennes. Nous avons vraiment une situation inacceptable aujourd'hui dans les soins de santé autour du pays, et nous devons travailler ensemble. Je suis aussi convaincue que, comme on a fait en ce qui concerne les garderies, c'est très, très possible pour le fédéral, les provinces et territoires de travailler ensemble pour ensemble aider les Canadiens et Canadiennes. Le fédéral est convaincu que ce n'est pas et ça ne peut pas être seulement une question de l'argent. Le Canada aujourd'hui dépense beaucoup en ce qui concerne les soins de santé. Quand on regarde les comparaisons avec les autres pays, nos voisins, alors nous devons aussi transformer ce qu'on fait. Mais je veux finir avec un mot optimiste positif. Quand on a annoncé notre programme pour un système de garderie nationale, beaucoup de gens étaient très, très sceptiques. Je me souviens les interviews que j'ai faites, plusieurs, et les journalistes, et c'était une juste question. On dit, pourquoi vous pensez que ce sera possible? C'était possible parce qu'on a eu de bonne volonté du côté fédéral, du côté des provinces et territoires, et je suis convaincue que ce sera possible aussi en ce qui concerne les soins de santé.
Hi there, Aidan Shamendi from Queen's Park Briefing for Minister Lecce. On the childcare workforce, you guys said in the summer that you're going to be launching consultations to discuss the early childhood workforce. Folks in the sector complain about very low wages. The experts that Minister Gould mentioned also talk about how the wages are too low, and that if they're not increased, then this whole kind of venture might fail. I'm wondering if you could give us an update on those consultations, if they happened, if they didn't happen, and if they didn't, when they're going to.
Sure. It's an important question because I think we appreciate that while we increase access and create more spaces, 83,000 more spaces since when we started, 86,000 spaces from when we started, we also recognize we need qualified workers to support our kids as prices come down and demand inevitably rises over the coming years. So it's a good problem, but it is a real problem, and we have a plan. Part of this agreement is to increase wages $1 per hour every year. Minimum of $18 per hour today will rise to $19 on January 1, and of course continue to increase year over year. The consultation continues to be underway, really to help guide us on what else can Ontario and governments do together to incentivize workers to enter into this really rewarding space and to stay within that space, because we do have many that will enter, but perhaps after a few years they may leave. So we do understand the correlation of competitive wages and the maintenance of our staff. It's why we have a plan to increase their wages. It'll rise to $25 per hour by the end of this agreement. And keep in mind, this program with the federal government is for children 0 to 6 years old. The province unilaterally extended funding using provincial resources for children in care for 6 to 12. They're not included in the agreement, but we still increased the wages of those workers as well. We thought there had to be an equitable increase, and we didn't want to see a massive shift of workers leaving one constituency of work to the more earlier years. So we're going to continue to increase wages every single year in the agreement. In addition to hire more workers, just a few weeks ago, I announced an expansion of the dual credit program, 420 spaces specifically for early childhood educators to really help accelerate and increase the amount of staff entering within our spaces. And of course, we've allowed private career colleges, public colleges, a variety of vehicles to make sure as many people enter this rewarding space and recognize the huge rewarding opportunities that come with working in places like here at the Y.
But I'd like to follow up on that, but I got another one from my colleague. A few months ago, you said, you asked the Ontario Colleges of Teachers to review its professional standards, given the controversy around how teacher in Oakville was dressing. The teacher's dress continues to make news, and the school was even put in a lockdown last month after a bomb threat was directed at the teacher. Is your government still working on any ways to resolve this situation for the students at the school?
Yeah, I do continue to believe that the Halton School Board, which is the employer, has an obligation to ensure that these classrooms are safe and respectful places to learn. Teachers need to uphold, as I've noted, the highest standards of professional standards when they're in front of children. And so I do not believe the board administration has done so to date. And I do believe the Ontario College of Teachers corroborated this principle. They said that the board has the necessary authorities to enforce those standards. So I expect them to do so. Obviously, we continue to believe that kids should be in school to learn, to be supported, to feel safe, and I want that to be the reality for every child in Ontario, including those in the GTHA, in Halton, and beyond.
Hi, Alison Jones with Canadian Press. I wanted to follow up on the recruitment and retention subject, and you mentioned how you're going to hold consultations to hear what more can be done, and we know one of the main things advocates have been calling for is a wage grid, and from what I can tell, Ontario is, I think, one of the only provinces that doesn't include a commitment to one in its agreement. So I'm going to say kind of two-parter here. For you, I'm hoping to hear if that's on the table. Is it something you're actively working towards? And for Minister Freeland, I think I heard you say in your opening remarks that ECE should be paid more. So I want to hear if a wage grid or perhaps a higher minimum wage is something that you would like to see in Ontario.
So we agree with the premise that our workers need to be paid more, which is why part of this agreement with the federal government confirms an increase of $1 per hour every single year in the agreement. Starting this January, wages will lift to $19 as a minimum in the province of Ontario. The consultation is to help guide broader changes to create incentives to maintain, retain, and ultimately recruit more workers, qualified workers within our childcare spaces. We're going to need many more workers because we're going to create many more spaces as we reduce fees, 50% by January 1 of this coming year, all the way down to $10 per year in 2025. And I just want to assure that the province will stay listening to our childcare operators, to parents, to the workers, and to the economic interests of the province and country to make sure that we've got a flexible childcare system that respects the choices parents make wherever they choose to send their kids, but also that allows us to grow our labor force, expand the economy, grow the economy, and allow people to work instead of having to stay home because of the economic disincentives, because it's just so expensive to afford childcare. I'll defer to the federal government for the rest.
Great, thank you. Look, we totally understand that there's A, no system, and B, no expansion of the system if we don't have the talented, qualified, and well-compensated labor force to work in it. Because when we talk about space creation, we have to have workers to create those spaces. Wages, however, are provincial and territorial jurisdiction. So each agreement that we have asked the provinces and territories to come up with a wage grid. Many provinces have announced their wage grid. Not all have done that. Some, like Ontario, continue to do that workforce work. But one of the things that I will note is that There is funding available within the bilateral agreements, but there's nothing stopping a province or territory from adding their own resources, like Ontario did for the 6 to 12, for ECEs that are caring for children 6 to 12. But I'll note that, you know, New Brunswick, for example, added about 54 million of their own dollars to increase wages to $23.40 an hour. Nova Scotia, Newfoundland did the same to get up to $25 an hour. The Yukon did that to get to $30 an hour. Manitoba did that for pension and benefits as well as wage increases, as has British Columbia. So, you know, it's a partnership. We're working together, and certainly within the agreements themselves, but we also encourage provinces and territories to add their additional resources to make those wage top-ups.
I just have a question for Minister Freeland on behalf of an Ottawa colleague.
Quick follow-up, so sorry to we have one more.
I think there's probably time for Chris as well. So the question is that the Auditor General's report on COVID benefits highlighted that the benefits helped the economy rebound from the pandemic, but at the same time raised concerns about ineligible payments and the lack of data to track the effectiveness of the wage subsidy program. In hindsight, what do you think their lessons are to learn from the delivery of these programs, and what would you do differently next time?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And first of all, I hope there isn't a next time. Seriously. And I think it's important for us to remember that when COVID hit, it was a once in a generation, once in a century shock to Canada. It was an economic blow, the deepest recession since the Great Depression. It was a social shock. Remember how traumatizing that was, how afraid we were, how hard it was to so many of us have to go home and stay home, how hard for the essential workers who had to go to work before there were vaccines and be really afraid, and thank you very much for that. And for our healthcare workers. So let's really, in judging actions taken in a crisis, in an emergency, remember that it was an emergency. I would also add to the conclusion around the economy. You know, you cited the conclusion with which I very much agree, that the emergency support the federal government invested in getting Canada through COVID in purely economic terms was money well spent. It allowed us all to get through COVID without deep economic scarring. And you see that particularly in the jobs numbers. 117% of jobs that we had before COVID have been recovered. A tremendous jobs recovery compared to just 105% in the United States. You see it also in the fact that, you know, our businesses, very much including our small businesses, are still alive and kicking. And there was nothing inevitable about that. But I do want to cite one other very important fact about how Canada got through COVID. Over the summer, David Naylor and a group of researchers did a report, and they looked at how many additional people in Canada would have died had we suffered US levels of mortality. And they concluded that an additional 70,000 Canadians would have died. Think about that. Like, that's the population of Fredericton. And those are, you know, those are our parents, our grandparents, our aunts and uncles who are still here because as a society, we took really tough measures that kept people alive, kept people safe, and we got through it with our economy intact. So overall, I think as a country, the provinces, the federal government, cities, individual Canadians, healthcare workers, I think overall, you know, without kind of breaking our arms, patting ourselves on the back, but I think overall we can feel like we did a pretty good job in a once-in-a-century crisis. And I think that that applies to the federal government's approach when it comes to supporting the economy and providing that floor that made it possible for us to get out of it with our economy intact, and also to put in place the really tough health protection measures that we needed to get through. Thank you.
Hi, it's Chris Rochelle from the Toronto Star. My questions are for Minister Lecce. I wanted to ask you about the 86,000 spaces. The FAO and advocates have said it's not going to be enough. So is this going to be enough to meet demand, or what are you going to do?
Well, we do agree we need to build more spaces. Part of today's announcement is a commitment to allocate over $210 million of startup grants to incentivize growth in communities that need it the most. And we think that's really positive to move forward with a program that will incent the creation of roughly 27,000 spaces that are going to be eligible for growth. And what that means is we're providing upwards of a maximum of $350,000 for up to 50 spaces created. That is going to provide a massive financial incentive to operators to build spaces and to build them according to the growth where we need it most in Ontario, be it in some of our rural communities that are underrepresented for children with special education needs, and just for other communities across Ontario where we're seeing explosive population growth. Keep in mind, we have hundreds of thousands of people moving to the country, part of our national immigration targets, and so we're going to need to continue to build spaces. And so the province of Ontario has a plan to expand childcare spaces within our publicly funded school system. We have a plan to build in for-profit and non-profit through the announcement of today's startup grants, providing literally over $200 million directly into our operators' pockets, which we believe will incentivize growth in the places and in the communities we need it the most. So this is definitely a positive starting point with the recognition. We're going to continue to work with all levels of government to keep building capacity, building spaces, and reducing fees for the families of this province.
And just circling back to the issue of the Halton board and the dress code issue and how the board has handled it, what more would you like the board to be doing?
Look, I think the bottom line in our position is that when kids are in front of staff, we expect them to uphold the highest standards of professionalism. Many families in the community have expressed profound concern with the management of this issue, and so we reaffirm our expectation with the school boards as employers that they act in the interest of children, and they listen to the voices of families, of the kids themselves in various schools, and parents who want their kids to go to work, go to school, focus on learning, and not have to deal with threats of violence or lockdowns or incidents that are very distracting and frankly unacceptable in any school environment in the province.
Last question. Hi, Dave McGinn. My question is for you as well, Mr. Lecce. I was just wondering, of the 86,000 spaces that is the goal, what sort of factors will go into determining where those spaces are created?
Yeah, it's an important question. So we have a growth plan that is being unveiled today where we're really targeting growth in areas that have been historically underrepresented. We're going to see growth happen organically. Thousands of spaces open up every year in this province, in the province of Ontario, since we came to power in 2018. But we recognize we really have to focus in and lean into space growth in the areas needed. So rural communities have disproportionately underrepresented numbers of spaces for their populations. Children from racialized communities, likewise Indigenous, we've seen a great underrepresentation for the lowest income. And of course, in high growth communities, both small towns are experiencing it and big cities. So we have a plan that really focuses in on those constituencies and communities and families that need it the most. We're incentivizing growth, part of a $200 million startup grant we're announcing today, in addition to the fee reduction of 50% for January 1. Together, these two announcements, I think, will reduce costs for families, increase access, and build the capacity for decades to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings the media bill to an end. It will be a really quick photo right here. And that's it. Thank you for coming, folks.